But without further ado, let's introduce the people who gave this festival its name and who've since had really prolific careers in the film industry. But I can never do them justice, so I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Carl.
I'm Carl. I was the production designer on the film, but I'm now a director of photography. Yes, in fact, the production design on Water Sprite is my only production design credit. But that's what it is.
I directed Who's Afraid of the Water Sprite, which was one of my first short films as a student. And since then, and largely thanks to the festival, it took 10 years to make my first feature film. And in that time, I also directed TV drama and commercials, hoping to direct more films, and also directing more commercials alongside that in order to afford to support myself to make more films. So yeah.
Hi, Sam. I work as a co-writer on Sprites, but also gaffer and sort of camera assistant on the actual production and shooting. These days I'm a cinematographer working in sort of TV.
I'm Ian. I was edit and DIT and general night person on the shoot. I'm now an editor in central London, mostly cutting commercials.
I'm Hansa. I was the producer of the Water Sprite, and now I work in Slovenia as a service producer and producer in commercials and film.
Brilliant, thank you. They're all being very humble, by the way. They have really interesting and cool credits, but it is
I thought everyone was underplaying themselves quite a lot.
But you've got booklets that you can look that up in. Anyways, let's start with some open questions for you guys, so whoever wants to answer them can answer them. I'd just like to get to know who you are a bit better and how you decided to get into film. So do any of you have a particular moment, a particular film that maybe got you started involved in filmmaking or sparked your interest in film as a medium that you want to be involved in?
I'm actually very happy to say that even as a kid loving film, it always seemed like some kind of weird magical thing that is impossible to do, but I just loved it as a fan and a viewer. And then I did a foundation art design course with Mikey, who's sitting there, and Will. I thought I was going to be a graphic designer because I had no idea what I was going to do. And I literally learned about film on that 1-year course, and especially a lot from Will as well. And then I was like, I can just download Final Cut and just cut stuff. So I kind of learned it all there, and then I was like, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. Didn't know when it was going to be edit, but something post-production, I was then completely sold on it personally.
Yeah, brilliant. Any other interesting stories?
Weirdly, so I always loved film as well, and I loved taking pictures and just being involved in things that were creative. And I'm sure most people have this eureka moment, and it's not even necessarily a film that inspired you. It was watching behind the scenes on Lord of the Rings, and watching the Weta workshop part of that made me want to be a production designer, and made me realise that people actually make films, and doesn't that look fun?
Hands down, the same. Lord of the Rings making of, because it's just one of the very few really in-depth departmental films about filmmaking that I think.
And I think Phil Alston, who sat back there, actually saw my first ever film, which was about some piglets. So you just sort of get inspired, get the bug, and you can't. I wrote lots of applications to studios or wherever to try and get work experience, but you kind of can't, so you just had to make your own thing. And I was about 14, 15 anyway, so too young really, and just started making things on a handycam, and then never looked back.
Lovely. Well, now that you are all filmmakers, is there anything that you wish, that you now know that you wish you knew when you started out? Is it, because I'm sure that a lot of the people in the audience now are trying to be filmmakers or are already filmmakers or at the beginning of their careers filmmakers. So is there anything that any particular quality that at the beginning you wish you knew a filmmaker requires?
A lot of patience.
A lot of patience?
Yeah, a lot. And you have to persevere, basically. Okay. Yeah, that's what I learned.
Yeah.
But I think the beautiful thing is that you're learning, you're constantly learning. So it's like, from the start you might not know anything, but you kind of, through everything you do, every job you take, every job you work on, you kind of learn something different, and that never stops happening as well. So I guess if there's something, I don't know if there's anything in particular that I'd want to have known before.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you're kind of learning it. It's that kind of.
I
That's
think in a lot of
exciting.
ways,
It's
if you
quite
knew what
fun.
you were getting into, you probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I think that ignorance is bliss. I think that's a fair point for Water Sprite.
Exactly.
I think if we'd have been told how much work it was before we finished, we wouldn't have gone near it. And I think that's sort of the beauty of filmmaking in general, is that it's not just about the film in itself, it's also about this journey that you go through making it. And that's part of the obsession with it. It's just enjoying the storytelling and enjoying that process. I think that in a lot of ways that ignorance is a lot of what gets us out the door.
Yeah.
I think the short films I made after Water Sprite were actually not as good as Water Sprite, partly because there was naivety in making the film, and almost there's so much to learn that you start learning about elements that become the focus of your short film. So we made quite a visual effects heavy film about an owl and a snail, and there's things that you almost becomes explorative, and there's something quite nice about not knowing too much. Like, we didn't have an assistant director who's the person who would like schedule the shoot. We really had no idea what we were doing, but it's part of the learning process, and weirdly I think you're always trying to get back to that, not overthinking it, just working instinctually.
Yeah.
But the one thing I wish I knew, and that I would sort of brace myself for, is the fact that it's not just patience, but it's also the no's as well as the yeses, and knowing that everyone gets that. And for all the festival entries, even for this film, for Who's Afraid of the Water Sprite, it was probably 1 in 10 for a very successful short film. And as Nada, our distributor for Gwen, will know, it's probably similar for Gwen, a feature-length film that was showcased by was showcased at Cannes and was on Grade 8 and premiered at Toronto International Film Festival, which from an outside point of view can look really impressive and amazing and exciting. But I just think Instagram as well makes everyone think that everyone's doing really well. I try and give that illusion too. And the thing that you realise is everyone struggles with rejection and failure all the time. And that's something I wish I knew from the beginning. It's not just you, it's everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. Now that we started talking about Who's Afraid of the Water Sprite, the film where all of you met, I'd like to know kind of where the project started, where was the idea from? I mean, it's quite
Started with
quite
a book,
interesting.
basically.
Okay.
I brought from back home, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it had like these short stories about Slovenian folklore, and I think Will read it, and you guys read it. And
Didn't it really start with a boozy New Year's Eve
That
trip
was-
to
yeah.
Ljubljana?
That was
It
probably with the story about the Water Sprite.
Yeah, travel.
Over the bridge,
Yeah.
because there was something.
He takes the most beautiful girl in Ljubljana and
Yeah.
takes her with him into the river. Basically,
Yeah.
that's the story.
I think it's very easy to get very, very taken with
Yeah.
the city. You go there, you go, I want to shoot a film here. Anything, I want to do something here.
It's inspiring.
And then finding that story was kind of perfect in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it works with your kind of love of everything dark and
Yeah. But I didn't know that back then, so it's natural. Yeah.
I think
But,
we all started loving that.
Yeah, we just wanted an excuse to make something because we found our university very supportive but quite controlling. We actually made this in the summer, and it was just the excitement to make something that
Yeah.
took us out to the. And you had a house out there, and we just, even with the films I made before, it was set on the farm because I grew up on a farm. So you work with your friends and you work with what you have, and that was an amazing. Your parents put up with us, just about.
Pretty much stay there. It was challenging. We had no signal there or anything.
We drank all their wine.
It's like evenings.
it was on many levels we had to learn about everything,
Yes.
even from technical things. The camera was a relative new camera at the same time, so it was all kind of learning every single stage.
It's the first red one in Europe.
in many, yeah. So
Like, this is day one of digital revolution.
after
like-
the shoot, even not just the students, other shoots, I became like a red
Yeah.
camera like tech people that people come to and ask things. I'm like, I just read the manual. Now I'm being asked all these questions, but no, we're in many ways out of our depth. But it was kind of fun in a way.
But that was it. It was just wanted to make something. I remember once we decided we were going to go off and make this thing in Slovenia, we had like a weekly film club where we just go around to someone's house, have dinner, and watch a bunch of films, talk about the fairy tale book that we had, and just these guys wrote it in the end.
Yeah.
But
It actually ties into my main thing I was going to think of, like the main thing to try and do, which is, like you said, with the uni weren't being that helpful to us. It was not waiting for someone to tell you to make something, it was just make something. And even through assistants and runners coming up where I work at an edit house, they always go, how do I get material? How do I get a show reel? Literally just do whatever you can to make something. There's so many ways of just making content, and by doing one thing you just learn so much for the future. I mean, it might seem daunting to find a project, but it's the key thing. Even if it's crap, just make content and
Make
you
it
learn
better.
so much.
also, it's not about. Don't worry so much about the kit. Like, just find people that you like making films with.
Even with practice,
Like, that's half the battle is finding people that you like working with, and then the rest will come. Like,
It's worth mentioning as well that Ian became a runner, became an edit assistant, and then 2 years ago started cutting commercials on roster. So he was cutting commercials to with the White House Post, which is who represents him now. But he almost had to build his client base to the point where directors and people come to him. So it's only been the last 2 years
it's
that
like
he started
a catch-22
editing.
where they go, well, we're not promote you to full roster editor until you can have a show reel with clients and you can build money. You go, well, how am I doing that if you're not advertising for me? So it's a impossible scenario in a way.
So 8 years out of the 10 slogging it, and then 2 years cutting. But also he's just been nominated for British Harrow in editing, which is like the highest in commercials. So that's pretty awesome. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say the same for Sam and myself. Like, a good chunk of this last 10 years, we started at the bottom, and I was a camera trainee. Sam went through lighting. It's only been the last few years that we've started shooting properly.
But that's where I've learned everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's doing those jobs, learning those things, sort of then going out and practicing what you're learning by shooting.
It's having a focus. Like, it's important to train and to learn your craft, but I never stopped being a DP. I was shooting everything at weekends with friends and whatever.
Turn down the paid work as a spark to go and shoot something
Yeah,
for free
like
for someone.
crazy stuff.
Then you get your first opportunity because someone else isn't available.
Yeah.
I know that I got the opportunity to shoot the first block of Misfits because the guy they really wanted wasn't available. And I know that I got to do Poldark because, there was less people who were around at that time because the industry was booming and there was so much TV being made. They had to turn to young directors, and I think that's happening quite a lot. You've got your break on Doctor Who because the DOP jumped off last minute. So you had your first TV credit shooting the new series of Doctor Who. That's kind of how it happens. You're kind of waiting for someone else to not be available to get your shot.
But then once you've got that step in the door, it suddenly gets a little bit easier. People recognise you've done it. You can do it again, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, they've asked you back. So.
That's nice.
And you did Britannia in between, so it's sort of it snowballs.
You're great at plugging the rest of the achievement.
Well, they're being very humble.
Can everyone at the back, by the way, hear us? Is that you're struggling to hear us? Okay, I'll speak up a little bit.
Okay. Sorry.
Try it. We'll be right. Yeah. You all mentioned kind of these how these experiences taught you so much in the process, and how making things taught you so much over the years. How do you look back on the things that you made? Let's say even this film, Who's Afraid of the Water Sprite? This was 10 years ago. Obviously, you guys were very much less experienced than you are now. Do you look back at it kind of like thinking, oh, I wish I'd done that, or is there a sense of pride in what you achieved at that time? How do you look back at these very, very past projects?
I think every project I do, I kind of tend to look back very quickly and go, oh, there's something I missed, or I made a mistake there. But I think there's an element where I think it's never going to be perfect. And if it is, then that's the time when I should quit, because it should always be getting better and building on top of that and what you're making. So looking back at things, I think it's things that you weren't happy with that I can do that this time because that experience has led me to do this better.
I mean, you learn more from your mistakes than you do successes.
And you keep learning in this industry. I don't think you ever stop, to be honest.
I think if anything, I look back on things in fondness for the experiences and going, oh, that was a fun job, or that was something kind of cool. But in terms of the actual craft of it, I always go, I wish I did that, or I mean, even the thing that I was nominated for this award, I would change so much of it. But that's not a bad thing. I think if you think it's all perfect, then I think literally, like you said, then if you're content with everything, then I don't know. I think you need that kind of crazy drive to keep finding perfection, which is, I don't know. Do you ever do it?
Well,
Probably not.
I think as filmmakers, hello, there's a treat. As filmmakers, you're also insecure that it's very easy to pick apart your own work. So you do have to find a line between when am I just being nervous and irrational and what actually is helpful criticism to myself. And so you do need to take it apart to move forwards to get better. But yeah, you could end up never leaving your house if you were being too, if I kind of would find it difficult to watch this again. I enjoy watching Gwen, but I'd still find there's moments where I wish I'd done things differently. But yeah, you've got to take some of that, not cripple yourself with it.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of awkward mic passing going on, but at least you can hear us now. So you already mentioned, that film is film is a constant process of learning, and you're always learning new things as you make a new project. Is there anything that you learned, any big challenges that you had to overcome during this particular film? You were still students. A lot of the people in the room are students. I think a lot of people here who are trying to make films face a lot of challenges. Is there anything that you learned with this particular experience that you still carry with you? Is there anything that you can highlight amongst that?
Always have a first AD on set.
Sorry?
Always have a first AD on set.
Okay. Always have a first AD on set.
That for me, it would be easier when we started. It would just be more organized, I think. But it was good that we went through it, though, I think.
I think there's so much from everyone probably of things that
It's always quite
that we've learned.
I think what was interesting is that I was 19 when we shot Water Sprite. I mean, anybody that doesn't cringe about the stupid things they were doing when they were 19, I think we all grew up at least me and Sam grew up on film sets. It's as much of our adult life as anything else, and I think me as a 19-year-old you can see the naivety and the ambition and the drive.
Well, you ended up in A&E, so...
Yeah.
Both of them.
2 hospitals in one day.
I drove them actually. No, you didn't.
There was an incident when Mansa had to drive someone to hospital and may have crashed. But you often just look back and you just see who you were when you were making certain things, and I think I cringe when I think about some of the stupid, in the film there's a padlock which holds the actors' hands to the chains to the wall, and I was desperately trying to make them look old because they were brand new padlocks from the shop, and I was trying to dust them up and all sorts of stuff. And I read the thing online that you can put things in vinegar to rust them quickly. They rusted the padlocks and dissolved the keys. There's me running around Slovenia trying to find a hacksaw at 2 in the afternoon when we're shooting in 3 hours. Yeah.
And we were shooting in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so it's professional things. That's just if you know what you're doing, then maybe it's just
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
If we knew what we were doing.
If we knew what we were doing, there's several things I see on screen, and I'm like, I think you do the best you can, and I think when I look back at films, I just see my growth as a person as much as I see your sort of connection to the film as well as it.
I think later productions we did maybe were more organised, but a good shoot doesn't necessarily make a good film. So we might have learned what a first assistant director is, a second assistant director, a production manager. We might have had a unit base, a tech base. We might have shot on film, not digital, and it might have felt like a very organised shoot. But that's great. Maybe we learnt that lesson and able to move on and understand you need organisation to allow creativity to happen. But it doesn't necessarily mean those films are any good. We just learnt that particular lesson on them. It is helpful if things are organised to be able to then be creative and have freedom, but not the be all and end all.
Cool. let's talk a little bit more about your career after. Well, this is after that's better. After Who's Afraid of the Water Sprite. Starting with what this festival, which back then obviously wasn't called Watersprite, did for your career and how that helped your career or didn't help your career. You can be as critical as you want. Obviously, you all won Film of the Year 10 years ago, and some of the nominees from this year's festival are in the room now, and I'm sure they're curious to hear what happened after you won, how that benefited you, what kind of things came out of it.
Well, I've always found film festivals themselves are like brilliant places to go to, especially if you have a film, because you meet so many like-minded people who you may work again with. And so I definitely think, it was from going to festivals with Watersprite, I met other sort of people and other directors that I would then find myself going and shooting their films for and things like that. So that's something, definitely having the award and being able to go to these festivals with something. I still think you can go to festivals without stuff, but it's definitely a good icebreaker if you've got something in the film. And that was really useful.
Even if maybe not the festival, but definitely the film, I think very much helped my career in that it just got things started. We went the routes of, I think we tried to finish the online of the grade of the film ourselves. We weren't very good, so we clearly needed some help by doing it. So I think Will went on a massive trip around Soho, emailing everybody who can, for free, who can help our little film. And we then got the farm in Soho, massive TV post house, and it works for them. They can get assistant colorists to get experience, etc. They did everything for us, online wise. And then so when the film was done, it did very well here, and I could say, oh, remember that film? Any chance I could be a runner? And then that was literally my foot at the door. So just because of that, it kind of got my career started and sorted.
For me, it was a bit different because I moved back home. So when I moved back, like when I was looking for a job, I still showed them this film, and I think because of this film, I got a foot into the door, like becoming a runner and stuff like that. So it helped me really to get my career started as well.
Yes, it's a long 10-year process, but that process started with meeting Hilary at the festival and talking to her, and that actually began the process of making Gwen my first feature film. And I got an agent through it, which is how then I started making TV. So yeah, I think quite a big impact. But also one thing, when you sort of say to people that the festival's named after the film, it's one of those things where actually it almost sounds so amazing. It's almost like but the legacy of the festival and the legacy of the film is probably better than the film. I think it's one of those, if you watch it, it's a student film. We were just very lucky to be in the first year. So it is still quite surreal coming back here.
I think just sort of echo what Sam said. I think it's just realising that festivals, particularly when you've got a film submitted and running in it, just gives you the chance to meet a lot of people that are making films, that you can network, and realising that they're just very social places that you can just go in and talk to people. And that is probably my biggest thing about film, is just get out and meet people and learn to work with each other. And festivals, particularly when you've got something showing, are just easily the best place to find other people to work with, hands down, easy.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm just a bit worried of time, so let's move on a little bit quicker than I was hoping to. Because I'm curious about some things, about learning some things about your experience in the industry as well, and not just your time as students. So I think this one might be interesting for you, Will. Having done, a lot of TV work and also feature-length work, how do you think directing short films compares to that? Is there anything that you feel they capture differently? Is there something unique about the medium?
Yeah. So I miss directing short films. Directing commercials and TV, you're basically doing what you're told, and I found it quite restricting, and I enjoyed being a part of ongoing series, but there was a part of me that wasn't being nourished by that, and that I was very fortunate, I was very lucky to be directing these things, and I was learning a lot doing them, but they weren't mine, it wasn't my story, it wasn't what I wanted to say. And it'd been a long time since I'd actually had the experience of writing and directing, and that was short films, and I really missed making short films. But the next time I had that feeling was making Gwen. And I think it's funny, you can become a jobbing director, and it is a job, and actually a lot of people are very excited by that, and I think that's a very skilled craft in itself, is to be able to be the person on that set, converting this script into a visual story. But I missed making short films quite a lot, and I always just burnt to be making my own, and wrote short films and still wanted to make my own content. And I think that's the things that short films gave me, was just being able to have a voice and being able to make your own thing. And I think it's very difficult to break into the industry, and then when you do, you're getting financial reward for your work, but then if you just follow the money and just do the job, sometimes you turn your back on having your own voice. And I think that is it's hard enough to get in, but then once you've done that, the balance of what jobs you take and the sacrifices you make to make your own films, be they short or feature length, becomes quite a difficult thing.
Do you think then, this is for everyone, that there's a certain kind of freedom to being a student that you don't have in the industry, and you're all nodding. Does that mean that what kind of experiences did you have in coming into the industry? Was it a bit of a shock when you stopped having this freedom that you had as a student, or how did you deal with, I guess, what were the problems that Will was describing about trying to retain your own voice, but also having responsibility, having to make money, and being in the industry?
I mean, this ties into something you asked us in the room before about is it worth it going to uni to do a film course or something like this? And like the very, very, very short answer is no, because you can easily get into the industry without doing that. But would I change anything? No, like not in a million years. And what it does do is give you 3 or 4, if you do a foundation, 4 years to just experiment and do whatever you want. And to your question, that when I get into the industry, yes, it was very, very different, but it almost felt kind of refreshing. I'd had my time to just do whatever we wanted, and that felt like, cool, I've had, 4 years is a long time, and then now to get and do things in a more job-based way felt kind of nicely timed for me personally.
Well said.
Did you want to say it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, comparing the various work that you've done in the professional world, and also the student work you've done, comparing short films, commercial stuff, TV stuff, what's the favorite thing? Not the favorite project, but what's the favorite kind of project to work on for each of you, maybe? Do you have a preference between any of them?
Yes. Films,
Okay.
like feature films. It's what I got into into the bit industry to make. I watch feature films. I reference feature films when I talk about other work. It's just, short films in some same sort of breath, but it's just storytelling, and it's just anything that has a good story. And feature films are, I just can't help myself, annoyingly. Like, it's hard work. Your life just evaporates for a film for a while, and it completely absorbs your entire life. But like I say, Manta's just finished a TV show, 50-odd days shooting, exhausted, and 3 days later, someone says, "Oh, do you want to do another one?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right." It's just, it becomes this obsession. I think for me, it's films, features and shorts, essentially.
Yeah, I'm the same. Commercials in TV, I think, helped me to make my film, but there became a point where I think there was a year where I saved up as much as I could, and in the end I ended up using credit cards, which isn't a good idea, but don't do that, guys. But basically I had to stop working in order to make the film. I had to not take the jobs to be available to make my own thing. And that was difficult, but I'm glad I did it. and I wouldn't not have done television because hopefully my film's better from having done it. It was just taking those opportunities and knowing when it was the right time to stop and back myself, really.
Yep, again, drama, films, TV, that sort of thing, you know, telling a story, you know, that's something I wanted to get in this industry for, and that's kind of what I love doing, especially with, you know, telling a story with the camera, creating emotion and an atmosphere with the lighting. That's what excites me, and doing that in commercials, it's very different. Doing it in sort of in a drama world, you kind of you're building that, you're creating that imagery, and that's beautiful to me.
I think the main theme between all of us seems to be the key thing is storytelling, but I'm actually happy whether it's documentary, content, adverts or drama, anything that where you really like feel something for it. Any strong emotion, I love. I mean, when I do my first showing, if you're meant to cry, obviously, and if the person does, then I feel wicked, you know.
Such a bully.
Yeah, exactly. But no, for me, it's any strong emotion, like that's rather than these like cool, slick things, something with a strong emotion. Me personally.
For me, it's kind of the same as for the guys. So, and then commercial-wise, you do like a project. Like production part lasts about a month, 3 weeks, if it's a short project, and then when you do feature TV, it also the crew becomes a family, which for me is much nicer. Like when you work with friends, with people you work well together, it just makes all the hard work is easier. So to say.
Brilliant. I think we're almost going to have to wrap up, but I'd like to ask one more question. If that's right, Emily.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The last question I wanted to ask was just generally, having been in the industry for 10 years, what do you find are the biggest mistakes you notice people who are just starting out make? And that can be in terms of small things in an edit that you see that you just wish you could tell them not to do, or even just career choices, steps in how to break in, if you have anything.
Super briefly thing is just, which is what I was going to say, which is what I wish I was better at before, which is just being too protective. And when you do your first cut, you think it's perfect, and it totally isn't. Criticism. People now I know who, they're 15 years in, they're horrible at taking criticism. And if you can't take criticism, I mean, things might not go that well.
We can get back to it later if you have something. But thank you everyone for bearing with me with my questions. I'd like to open the floor now to anyone who has a question for anyone on the panel. Just raise your hand and I'll pick you out if you have anything to ask them. Now's the time. Yes, Seth?
In terms of like writing and getting started with writing your first shorts or like first film stuff, what advice would you give to people who are like starting out in terms of like how much you should trust your own voice, how much you should be critical of yourself, or whether you should just go for stuff? That's sort of the question to anyone.
Just, I think, only a little bit. So I think it's interesting to say trust your own judgment. It's not. There's a reason why I think my early stuff was, and still what I'm making now, to be honest, is based around landscape and agriculture, because I grew up in Norfolk and that inspired me, and I kind of, even though Gwen's set in the 18th century, I'm still 19th, I should know that. I still write what I know, and I think that's the thing for you as well, is write what you know, what inspires you. Like I made some mistakes on short films. After taking Water Sprite to festivals, I kind of thought I knew what festivals wanted, and I tailored my next film to that, and it didn't have a heart. Like I was trying to be someone else. So just, the best thing you can do is write you, and as long as you are writing, as long as it's coming from your perspective, I think, that's a surefire way to kind of crack on with it and hopefully do a good job of it.
I'd just say that on the front of things that the best things I've worked on have honestly been the things where the directors, particularly films, that they're so into the story and it's so them and it's their character and they're so involved with it. I think you've just got to be honest and just write what you want to watch, basically.
Yeah, brilliant. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
I'd love to know if you have budding writers or budding directors and they just want to get on a film set and shadow someone, which roles do you suggest they should shadow to get an insight into what they need to do when they grow up?
Well, I think if you want to be a director and you're shadowing, it's useful to shadow a director. Obviously, I think if you want a writer, then again, if you're doing other roles within the film industry, sometimes just getting onto that and trying to get into that pathway. So as a cinematographer, I went through the lighting room, which is quite different, but camera lighting, getting into that is really useful to learn about everything. Just keep working at those, and also, eventually start making money as well, which is helpful. But I think in terms of, I'd say directors and writers, I'd say probably trying to shadow a director would be useful. I don't know if there's anyone else that'd be...
I guess that's the obvious one, but is there anything else on set that's useful?
Isn't just being on set good?
being on set in general.
Just a runner.
So,
Anything. I just thought. I rarely go on set. I normally don't really like it. Sometimes I have to go on set, but just being there sometimes is kind of cool. And you can see everybody. I can see the directors working with the DP, and that's kind of just fun. Even if maybe not to really get a good insight, but just to have a quick see what it's all like. Just be a runner.
Even if you maybe think now you know what you want to do, like going on film sets, it can quickly change. I know people that wanted to do production and they ended up ADing, and so it's just interesting to see where it takes you.
As a director, and I've had people that I've brought along who shadowed me, but what I learned is that I'm of no use to anyone on set. So if there's someone who's trying to learn off of me, it's probably quite hard to see what I'm doing anyway, because I don't look like I'm doing anything. The assistant director looks like they're doing it all. And you've not really got time to give to the person who's with you. I actually found it really helpful. I had someone shadowing me on Gwen, and they came on during the grade. So we're in a nice, comfortable dark room. People are bringing us coffees, and it's quite a slow process, and we're watching the film. They could ask me any question all day because I wasn't stressed, and one's been asked 100 other questions, and we picked the film apart. And in a way of, we did this because of this, and actually I enjoyed it, and I could give this person quite a lot of time. So I think that's probably a good bit of advice if you are looking to shadow someone, is to choose the right part of the process. And it is great to get on set. Hilary, actually, I went on set during a TV series that she was making. She very kindly let me come, and no one knew I was there. I just hid in the background. I didn't follow anyone in particular, but at least I'd been on a TV drama set before I stepped up. If my first day on a TV set was my first day of Misfits, I would have been even more terrified than I was. So it was just nice to, this is kind of what the shape of it's like. It was helpful,
I actually get quite a few camera trainees that are budding directors. For what can be a bit frustrating because it is a job that needs to get done, and sometimes staring at the director all day is a bit irritating. But it is quite handy in that you do get quite close to the director. You end up setting up the monitors and that sort of stuff. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but just any job in film, if you can get on set and just see how it works, it's an alien world when you first walk onto a busy film set. And also you might realise that it's not quite the job that you're expecting, and maybe you'll see something else that I think any job in a film set ultimately. The only issue with running is that the key's in the name, you're quite busy. You might not see that much, but a job on a film set is going to help. Anything, running, training, anything, shadowing, anything, just a job is an insight.
I think Sam and I have talked about this in the pub as just a thing we ended up talking about, but sometimes if you want to be a director of photography or a director, if you get seen as something else, it can be quite difficult. So Sam, when you became DOP on Doctor Who, people have seen you there you're now in charge of have seen you, make the teas and stuff, and sometimes that's not actually easy. So I actually tried to avoid running. I only went on sets to observe, because I think if you do want to be a director and you can avoid running, I think it stops people seeing you as a runner, because that can become a block. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I mean, I do totally agree. I think it's something that's useful if you want to be a director. Just go and make stuff. Just go and direct it. If you get a chance to go on a film set and see what it's like and understand the etiquette and how it works, brilliant. But go and do it. Just shoot stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have to see a hand in the back. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your journey to getting an agent? How did that happen?
Out of necessity, because Hilary wanted to employ me to write a film, and for legal reasons I had to have one. So that happened. She got in touch with a few, and I met a few, and it just became a process of just meeting the right people and conversation. So unfortunately my journey to one was more of a necessity, which isn't probably going to be helpful for you. But the one thing that is worth mentioning is it was actually it was an agent's assistant who assigned me. So it was the assistants who are building new clients, who are looking for people, who actually will give you the time, because they're building their client base. And that's one thing I'd say is approach assistants rather than the big headline agents, because they've barely got time for their own clients, never mind new ones. But Sam's just signed with an agent, so he could talk about that process too.
Well, yeah, I mean, I reached out to a load of agencies through email and got a few things back saying we're not looking for anyone at the moment. But I guess through actually just working and getting the jobs, and then it was people on, it was actually the line producer on Doctor Who put me forwards to an agency, and so they gave me a call, went in for a meeting, and the rest is history.
Well, that was an assistant.
She was assistant stepping up. That's really useful, I guess, because she hasn't got many people on the book, so I'm someone important on that now.
Okay, I have brilliant question.
I'm just wondering if there was any advice that someone gave you guys that you found really helpful, or perhaps not helpful. Maybe even a bit of red advice, or any kind of simple pearls.
You're laughing, I think you did something.
I mean, when I was a trainee, I had a tough focus puller. He gave me advice every 5 seconds. But yeah, there's no such thing as luck. Make your own luck. I think that's probably the good one. Don't be lucky. Do a good job. I don't know, all the little bits and pieces. That's just kind of craft stuff, I guess.
Don't look over your shoulder. That's one up. I think it's a general piece of advice. It's a bit of a cliche, but I definitely find that it's intimidating seeing what other people are doing, and I think just being supportive of what other people are doing and letting them get on with it, but concentrate on yourself. I think is it can become. It's just I think that's a more beneficial way of working. I know people have come off of social media to help themselves in that way. I don't necessarily know if that's essential, but just not looking over your shoulder.
In production, we like to say there's no problems, only challenges. So that was one piece of advice I'm still holding on to.
Yeah.
Maybe just if you've got a good crew and everyone's good, they'll only make you better as well. So working with good people, finding good people is again one of the key things. Which I think also someone was saying the other day. I think Em was saying about you, one of your key qualities is finding good people and working with them, and then everything gets better.
Me look better.
I think one of the things I've always noticed is it's incredibly stressful sometimes on a shoot. Things can go wrong, and all sorts can happen. And I've always found sometimes the best thing to do is rather than go head on into everything without stopping, you can take a moment to take a breather, step away from the problems, work it all out, and step right back in, because that will save you time in the long run.
Is Is there any advice you would give to people, you won the Film of the Year 10 years ago. What advice would you give to, who knows, maybe the winners of the Film of the Year in this room right now? You could give them a piece of advice. What would you give them, having left Watersprite 10 years ago?
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Just keep going. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, just work makes work. And
Or if the film does well here, like, now's the time then to make the most of it.
Yeah.
People remember things if it does well now, then go on a crazy PR thing, use it, do it now.
The other thing I'll add to that is actually, it's actually more useful if you've not won, because it's great that we're here and our film won the first year, but it might not won the second year if we're here exactly the same film, or the third or the fourth or the fifth. Sometimes it's just the panel is almost, the win is the nomination, and it's almost beyond that. It can be arbitrary, it can be, it can just be the way the panel went that day and the way the panel went on another day. So I think you just have to remember sometimes you're really lucky to be in the nomination category. And I remember when I used to play a lot of rugby, and one of the things a sports psychologist gave us when we were in the academy was like, set goals you can control. Winning an award is not a goal that you can control, so it's not a helpful thing to aspire to. The helpful thing to aspire to is making something that you care about and that you want to do. If you happen to win an award, great, and make the most of it, like Ian says. But also, if you don't, you should never feel bad about that either. Try to stick to that.
Yeah. Brilliant. No more questions. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our brilliant panel.